really excited to have a Blue Box reunion. I was at American Express from 2005 to 2011. Seems like an eternity ago. I see lots of old friends here. Well, they're not that old, but friends from the past, and I'm not going to say their names here, but thank you, friends and former colleagues, for joining. Let me make sure I can get my screen sharing set up, and we are recording this, and I know some of you need to duck out a little bit earlier, and that is okay. We will be sending a recording out to folks. And I am working with 5 different screens here, so you may see my eyes look all over the place, and that's because I'm looking at my multiple different monitors. And my son Jonah has helped me set up 5 screens, which are amazing. Some people think it's crazy, but it works for me. Let me get to my agenda. I'm going to be sharing some things on the screen, and hopefully that will work okay. We'll test this sucker out. We want to go through some special arrangement to make sure that no one on this webinar can see each other, but I can tell you that I do work with many American Express clients. So welcome to Blue Box, to the Big Tech webinar. And as I mentioned to many of you who are joining, I want to share a little bit about my story about how I moved from American Express in 2011 to Google, and some of my trials and tribulations and so forth, and advice for those of you that want to make a similar sort of switch. So I'm going to share my screen if I do this properly. And I appreciate you guys' patience as I work out this fancy technology. So hope everyone's doing okay and are safe. I know COVID is everywhere. Our babysitter is down with COVID, which makes it a lot harder for me and my family. Fortunately, she's safe, but just recovering. So hopefully everybody here is safe and sound and not too disturbed by the craziness of COVID and everything else. So thank you and welcome to Blue Box Big Tech webinar. What I'm going to do here is talk a little bit about my background. I'm going to share share my screen, and then I will open it up to questions at the end. So first off, let me tell you a little bit about me. My name is Alan. Many of you here know me from the past, but for those that don't, I have had a 26-year career in the corporate world. I started off as an equity analyst on Wall Street, then went into venture capital. After that, I read the book Moneyball by Michael Lewis and thought that I wanted to be Billy Beane, not the Brad Pitt character from the movie. It was before the movie came out, but Billy Beane, the general manager of the Oakland A's. I wound up working in baseball for a year. It was fun, but it was a nice place to visit. I wouldn't want to live there. I left baseball and pivoted. I wanted to pivot my career. So business school was a great opportunity for me to do that. And I went to Columbia Business School in New York. After Columbia Business School, I wanted to work in marketing. I wanted to stay in New York. I love credit cards. I love credit card points. And there were so many CBS alumni that went to American Express. I wound up building out a network there, met lots of great people. And Amex was my top choice. Unfortunately, they decided to hire me. So I began working there in 2005. I had 4 jobs at American Express over my 6 years there. My first job was a manager in the corporate card division. I don't know if some of these terms might have changed. I don't know what you guys call it necessarily at Amex now, but I was on the corporate card side, working on savings at work. It was not the most fun experience because I had a really shitty manager, but I quickly pivoted out of there and moved into Open, working on the Costco card. And Costco I was a huge fan of. And so it was really exciting for me to work at Costco. I've I'm a huge Costco shopper and fan. Worked on that card as senior manager of card acquisition. Then after about a year and a half there, I moved into customer retention, which was a really cool role as well. I was managing call centers with Convergys in Orem, Utah. And when customers want to cancel their card, we'd figure out how to save them or which customers we want to save. So I did that. Then I wanted to get promoted, and I interviewed 10 times, I think, for 10 different roles at American Express, going from a senior manager to director. And for those of you that are at American Express, it was really hard for me. Some people had an easier ability to make that shift, but when you go from one level to another, you're also competing with people that are going laterally. So I lost out to some directors going over to another director role while I was going from a senior manager to director. So that was frustrating for me. It took me a long while to get promoted into the role. And the role that I got promoted into was director of Costco and Lowe's card acquisition, which wasn't that exciting to me because I'd already done that. But they wanted to hire me as a director, gave me the opportunity to go there. I got a whopping $10,000 increase in compensation. And I think my bonus went from 8% to 15%, something like that at the time. And I forget what I made at that point, but I'll share that with you shortly on a slide. So I was there on the Costco card and the Lowe's card acquisition. During my time at American Express, I got a little frustrated with the slow pace of growth. You have to be in a role for 18 months, and then you have to take another role, and then you apply to get promoted, and you're competing with other people that are already at the lateral roles. I saw it being so many people told me working in a marathon at American Express is a marathon, not a sprint. I like to move fast, and I also don't like to be held back by arbitrary rules. So I began to get a little frustrated by that. And then another thing was frustrating for me. I think you still do ratings with the G score and the L score. If you guys can someone can confirm that. Yeah. Okay. So I see that. One year, I kicked ass in card acquisition. I had a lot of benefits because we changed the value proposition of the Costco card, but my numbers were off the chart. I think I was supposed to acquire 20,000 new card members and open, and we acquired like 60,000. And some people that are in the chat here were on my team there as well. And we were just like kicking ass. And the wind was at our back because we changed the value proposition. But so when I put in for my rating, I said I should get a G1 and an L2. And my manager at the time said, well, we're going to put you in for a 2-2. And I was in disbelief. I was like, I shot through my goals by threefold. I crushed them. So I convinced him to give me a G1, but in turn, they wound up dropping my L score to an L3, which was total bullshit. But then when I wound up getting involved in calibration, and for those of you that are managers involved with calibration, yeah, and I see someone in the comments saying it's all a numbers game. They were looking at the total score. So even though they say there's a G and an L score, it's really the total score that dictates compensation and promotions and all that good stuff. So if my G was going from a 1 to a 2 to a 1, then they had to drop my L score. It was all this bullshit stuff to put me into some sort of bucket. They probably thought, like, they knew I was a total 4, like the 2 plus 2 is a 4. So if I was going to be a 1, they were going to make my L score a 3. So it became a 4. So it was kind of like a ridiculous process. Just tell me I'm going to be a 4, and I wouldn't even go through this whole process. I see some people relating with that. So, and calibration is messed up at every company, and I can tell you stories about that. But that experience was really left a sour taste in my mouth, and that led me to start looking for roles. I was interviewing for external companies. I was looking at Facebook at the time, although I thought they were kind of not going to be there for the long term, because I saw Friendster, I saw what was it called, MySpace. Then Facebook was there. Facebook was still pretty new, so I was kind of a little scared to go over there. I thought social media was a fad. I was wrong there. I got offered a role at a startup company called JetSetter, which eventually was acquired by Gilt Group. I didn't take that because the compensation was about the same. The equity looked good, but it was a private company. I didn't know if it was going to go public. I decided to stay at American Express. But I did want to get out of American Express. I did want a faster career growth. I did want more money. And I did want to get out. I was interested in the tech space. I like tech, and it was growing fast. And Google happened to be the best company to work for back in 2011. It maybe arguably still is, but depending on what survey you look at. But I couldn't get into Google. I submitted multiple resumes for roles that were a good fit for me, but I submitted my resume in with hundreds, if not thousands, of other individuals, and crickets. Maybe I got a canned response on occasion, but I submitted at least 5 or 6 applications. Then eventually, through a buddy of mine that I went to school with, I went undergrad at Binghamton. He knew someone that he played on the Temple softball team with at Google, this guy, Ben. And he's like, hey, let me put you in touch with Ben. I think you'd be a good fit for Google, and Ben's a good guy. Reached out to Ben in February of 2011, and he spoke to me. He liked my background. They do like Amex talent there, not just at Google, but at other tech companies, because Amex is a well-established brand. They grow good managers there. And there's good cross-functional stakeholder relationship building and so forth at American Express. So it's a great brand. So once I was able to speak to this individual, Ben, he liked my background. He showed me a role that he asked if I was interested in. And let me show you what that role looks like, because I saw the role and I was like, holy shit, I can't do this. But when he showed me the role, when Ben showed me the role and said, hey, Alan, are you interested in this? I said, yeah, definitely. Even though I didn't think there was any shot that I could, well, I just didn't even understand what the role meant, honestly. And let me call my screen up. So again, I was a marketer at American Express, although I would argue that my marketing was in fact more operational. But at Amex, you're usually risk management or marketing. I was in marketing. So let me share my screen here. And let's get the right screen. Okay. So if someone can just give me a comment and see if they see this Gmail thing on my screen that is from 2011. Yep, people can see it. Okay. So this was an email that I sent to my mom, my dad, my sister, my father-in-law, and my wife after I got the job. And I was proud of the job. And I was like, hey, this is what I got. So if you look at this job, manager of product operations and escalation management, publisher products. I didn't even know what the hell publisher products were at the time, but I learned what those were. And I didn't know what a lot of these acronyms were. This is how old it is, that they're building a $10 billion business. And Google's now is, I think, a $150 billion company. $10 billion is a rounding error for them. So the responsibilities were managing a global team. I never managed a global team. I managed 3 people, maybe 4 at American Express. And this was managing a team of 14 people globally, providing strategic insights, to lead continuous product improvements. So I did work with product at American Express, but working with product in Amex is so different than working with product at tech companies, driving business results, working with engineering and product management. So I was able to convince them that working with risk management is quite similar to working with engineering. It actually is in a lot of ways. Manage complex technical issues. I never managed complex technical issues. Troubleshooting, I've never done troubleshooting. And then the requirements were BA in tech or related field. I had a BA in psychology, so I don't know how related that is to technology. MBA preferred, so I checked that box. And I think that helped me get in as well. At least 10 years of demonstrated experience developing and executing strategies. That's kind of vague, but I was able to talk my way through that. Managing people, experience with software, and track record of success managing large-scale technical projects to completion. I did not do that. Like I worked with some technical teams within American Express so I could talk my way through it, but I did not really have that ability to understand complex technical issues and provide leadership in crisis situations and change management experience preferred, but not necessary. I did not do any of that stuff previously. But through my preparation for the interview, and I talked to lots of people there and I prepped well, even despite the fact that I got the referral from this guy, Ben, I had to interview with 11 different individuals. They've since streamlined that process, but I interviewed with 11 different people. And near the end, well, I was interviewing for 11 different people because it turned out it was 2 different roles. I didn't really understand that I was interviewing for 2 different roles simultaneously until late in the process. Then they asked me, do you want role A, which is working with, it was working with Rich Media, or this role here, the product operations role. And this one kind of freaked me out. So I was like, I want to work for the Rich Media role. And they were like, well, we want you for this role. And I was like, okay, well, why don't you just tell me where you want me and I'll go there. So once they led me to this role, I was like, sure, I'll take this role. So I wound up interviewing mostly for this role, but and then I got the role. And I got the role on April 13th, 2011. And I will show you, I got a call late at night. I think it was like 10 o'clock at night, which was 7 o'clock West Coast time, which scared me that the recruiters were working at 7 o'clock Pacific time. And I was taking the call at 10 o'clock, and that's not typical Amex hours. So that gave me a little bit of a scare. But I will show you the offer that they made me. And let me bring that onto the screen here, if I can do this properly. Can you guys see my screen with the Google Slides where it says each month you wait, you lose out on 5K? No. Okay, so let me do this another way. Sorry. What about now? No. Okay, let me try one more thing. Hold on one sec. Okay, I see what I got to do. And I appreciate the patience here. We are working on a better webinar platform, but this is what we got for now. Do you see it now? Yes. Okay. Awesome. So I will present, well, actually, I'm not going to present this because it will mess up the screen, but I don't know if you can see this large enough, but this was my salary at American Express when I left in 2011. $125,000 base. It was maybe 124.8 or something like that. My bonus was at the 401k match, HSA match, equity vesting, which I thought was a lot. I was like, ooh, I got stock in Amex. And my total comp was 166, which, it wasn't like, I don't want to complain, but I knew I was paid under market. Then the Google offer they made me was 154 base. The bonus was a percentage, I think 20%, what is that, 20% or something like that. 401k match, they had a higher 401k match. HSA match was higher. Equity. So equity that they offered me was, I believe, whatever 4 times that amount is. So, so the total comp was 227, which was $62,000 more. And the question is, was that role comparable to the Amex director level? So I went from a director at Amex to a manager at Google, which is a level 6. I didn't really give a shit about what the level was, what the title was. I cared more about the 227,800. And I didn't even know how to calculate that properly because the RSUs were kind of confusing to understand how they were describing them to me. But the 154 plus the 30 plus Google plus the free food plus being able to bring dogs to work, all that stuff, I accepted the offer on the spot. I was like, yes, I want to take this. I didn't even tell them I wanted to think about it. I was like, I want the offer. When do I start? So that was error number 1 that I made at Google. And I made lots of errors at Google. But I realized in hindsight that, and probably more seasoned people on this call know than I do, that your first offer is never your last offer. And I could have easily gotten $20,000 to $40,000 more from that. Yes, and someone saying always negotiate, and that's totally true. You can always get more. Well, not always, but it's always worth trying. So that's what I got at Google. And then just because I have this on the slide here, this is what happened 10 years later, a decade later, before I left Salesforce a few months ago, that my comp increased by 3.3 times afterwards. And that's going from multiple different companies. So that was a little bit on the compensation. Then the next aspect that I want to share with you is, if I can get this here, sorry, is, okay, so did Google know how much I made at American Express? Yes. So that was probably set me back as well. So I told them, I don't know if I told them the exact amount, but I probably told them I like 160 total or something like that. So yes, I did tell them. And at that time, I think they were able to ask that information. Now companies cannot ask how much you currently make. So they knew that. And I know that this number was significantly lower because I came in as a level 6. I wound up managing level 6s later that were making more than I was at the 154 level. So got to Google. I was super excited. My first month or two, awesome. The food was great. The cappuccino bars were great. I got to wear jeans to work. I was at American Express when we had to wear khakis or slacks or whatever. And there was big controversy because I think Ash at the time, I don't know if he's still there in risk management. Yeah, Ken Chenault was there at the time. I heard it was more Ash on the risk management side. Didn't want people wearing jeans. And I remember it was so hard for us to wear jeans. If we all donated money for the Blue Box effort for the donation, we can get 1 day of jeans, and it was so special. Oh, okay. So Squarey wears sweats sometimes. That's good. I'm wearing sweats now. Yeah. I got to wear jeans, bring dogs to work. I only brought my dog to work one time because it was a pain in the ass. I was concerned that she was going to have an accident there in the big building. So I was digging life at Google for the first couple of months, even though I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was managing a team of 14 people. I inherited some problems that I had to manage out. I was working for a really tough boss at the time. He came from McKinsey. He was, but he was kind of a bit of a dick. At first, he got better. To his credit, he was very open to feedback and he improved. But he was a slave driver at first, where I was working till like 12, 1 o'clock at night. So I got to Google, and let me show you. So then the first few months, it was a honeymoon phase. It was awesome. But then come month 3, 4, 5, 6, it was the worst time of my life. I don't know if people are familiar with imposter syndrome, but I felt like I was an imposter there. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like I would get emails and I wouldn't even know what to do with them. And I would show them to my wife, even though it was confidential. But I was like, honey, what do I even do with this? Just like, well, just ask someone. And it was like, okay, good idea. But I was like frozen, a deer in headlight at times. I suffered miserably. So let me show you. This was my first manager feedback score that I got. So they were doing it every quarter at the time at Google. Now they do it every 6 months. But this was my first manager feedback score. They called it upward feedback score. Do people see this on the screen? It says UFS. Yeah, okay. So my overall favorable score was 72%. And they don't tell you what percentile you're in, but I knew I was in the bottom 25 percentile because the bottom quartile was 74%. So I knew I was in the bottom 25 percentile. They gave me intervention. They didn't call it intervention. They called it NMI, new manager integration, where they had a lot of remediation for me. Here are some of my results that I had here. So they broke this down. I thought I was a miserable failure for lots of different reasons, and I reached out to friends at American Express to potentially get a job back there. I was in conversations with that. I spoke to my manager and said, hey, this job might be too stressful for me. Is it okay if I go from a level 6 to a level 5? Fortunately, he laughed at me. He thought I wasn't being serious, but I was being serious. So after a few months, and a lot of the reason that the challenges existed is I didn't have a network there. I was afraid to ask for help. I didn't really know what I was doing for a while. And Google works fast. I remember at American Express during December, things are a ghost town because people are use it or lose it on PTO. And when I was at Google, people are working through December 30th or so. So it's a much harder working culture, at least back in 2011. I don't know how it is now. So I got there. The only reason I was able to get through that tough period is the help of my wife, the help of a career coach that I hired, the help of a shrink, the help of a social worker, and time. So all of that, eventually I figured stuff out. So about 6 months later, I started hitting my stride and I really started enjoying Google. And over the course of time, I became a better manager as well. So this was my upward feedback score in 2011. And here is my upward feedback score in 2000. Let me get this here properly. This was my upward feedback score in 2015. So got to 96%. I was in the top quartile there. Lots of 100% here. I also was nominated for, not nominated, I won an award for being one of Google's great managers, which was awarded the top 25 managers. And my wife and I got to go to Cabo. And I'll show you a quick picture here. We got to go to, and at some point I'll put this in a deck, but anyway, this is my wife, Melanie, which some of you on this call know, and it looks very pixelated here. Maybe it will come in. So there she is. There's my wife, Melanie, and me. And this in the sand says GMA for Great Manager Award. They sent us on this ridiculous trip, which was amazing, and all was awesome at Google. This picture was in February of 2016. So then sorry. Every time I say the G word, my phone goes off, except when I actually want it to. So then in November of 2016, I got fired. And there's a long story to that. I'm not going to go into that. I'm happy to talk to anyone offline. And that is my second biggest regret I've had in life, because I did something stupid. I apologize for it. And frankly, I didn't cause any harm, but I did something stupid and I admitted to it. And I got canned. I got walked out of the building. It was not so cool. And there's a longer story to that, but we don't have time for that. But anyway, so my Google career ended quite quickly. After my Google career ended, having Google on the resume helped me to get my next role at, I wound up consulting at a company called Datadog, which was private at the time, became public. I liked the company. I did not like the role that they had me in. Then I went to a company called Andela, which I loved the role. I was VP of operations, reporting right into the COO, but the company was a cluster. I felt like I was working at Dunder Mifflin. Like there was seriously crazy stuff going on. I left Andela after 4 months, went to Facebook, and I didn't love Facebook, but the manager that was hiring me was actually that guy, Ben, who helped me get into Google. He wound up going to Facebook. He recruited me over there to Facebook. I worked at Facebook for 1.5 years. Ben wound up getting fired from Facebook. And because I was Ben's guy, my career there was not in as good a shape. Left Facebook. I followed Ben actually to Tableau. He helped me navigate over to Tableau. Tableau got acquired by Salesforce. And then I was at Salesforce until September of this year. September of this year, dealt with some crappy managers at Salesforce. They were stopping me from doing my side business, which is now my full business, which is Kadima. And I left there in September 22nd, the first day of fall. So I don't know if anybody are Seinfeld fans. George said had a good episode where he talks about the summer of George. I called it the fall of Alan. September 22nd was the first day of fall. And that's when I began my career as an entrepreneur, full-time entrepreneur at Kadima. So that's where I am now. So that's a little bit about my backstory. So now I'll tell you a little bit about, and thank you for the congrats. Now I'll tell you a little bit about how I made the jump and how I think how you and people here can make that jump as well. Let me call this up here on the screen, and then I will cut this off at 1:45, at 45 minutes past the hour, to open it up for Q&A. And if you have questions now, you can start putting them in the chat and I will answer them. But what I've learned over the course of my career is the jump can totally be done. And you just have to take a proactive approach to your career. So do folks see this slide of the Kadima 6-step framework on the screen? Someone can give me, yep, okay, cool. Sorry, my dogs are trying to get out here. Gotta let them out. So the steps for it, which I've since boiled down throughout my career, is there are 6 steps. First, you need to be able to define your goals. You need to define what you want. And when I was at American Express, I knew I wanted to get out of there. I knew I wanted to get more money. I wanted to work in tech. I started to think about the different type of companies I wanted to get into. I didn't put all my eggs in the Google basket. I was looking at Facebook. I forget what other companies I was looking at the time. I probably have a spreadsheet somewhere, but I wanted to get out at American Express. Then you need to leverage your strengths. So what attracted Google to me was the fact that I was a manager, that I came from a big brand, and that I had Columbia Business School on my application, on my background. So they thought I was smart, and you leverage those strengths. And then 3, this is the most important one, build those relationships. I've had 29 jobs in my career, and I actually have a list of those here. Here are the different companies I've worked for. Here's the source of how I got them. And all the ones in bold are through networking. So most of my jobs I got through networking. 24 out of my 29 jobs I got through networking. I actually give job ratings and boss ratings, and here are the assholes I've worked for. But anyway, there's some Amex people on there, so let me take that off there. Just, it's really important to build those relationships and the network. And if you don't have it, it's not that hard to build once you identify your goals and identify what sort of companies you want to get to. And coming from American Express, you have a great brand on your resume, working cross-functionally, working for one of the top global brands in the world. Well, I guess that's redundant, global brands in the world, but you need to build those relationships to help get you either in the door or help give you understanding of the interview process. Then you need to search and apply. So once you have those target list of companies, you need to be proactive about looking at those company job boards. And when you see a job that's a good fit at a company where you know somebody, you reach out to that individual and you ask nicely for a referral. And there's ways to do that more effectively. Then number 5 is you need to interview with confidence, and you need to prepare for it. And people that got into the blue box, behavioral-based interviewing at American Express is the most common interview tactics that occur everywhere. Even though I did so much research on the technology and ad serving and how Google made money, no questions came to me about that at all, except there was one interview that actually made me sweat. That was like really not technical in nature, but just asking me questions about what Google should do with their app store. Android was a relatively new platform at the time. I don't even think the Play Store existed back then, but they were asking me questions about iTunes versus Android, or Android versus Apple. And I was kind of out of my element, but I was able to bullshit my way through that, fortunately. But interview with confidence, the behavioral based interviewing, if you're familiar with the STAR technique, situation, task, action, result, or at Columbia Business School, we called it CAR, context, action, result. All these things are learnable. Do your research before you meet with your people, and then negotiate for more. So as I said, I left at least $20,000 on the table, probably more. And now I work with people and I help them negotiate. And every time I've helped people negotiate, I've got them between $10,000 and $55,000 more. And in my career, I've gotten myself $109,000 more through negotiation. So there are ways that you can negotiate effectively. So that's the reason why I'm telling you this, and it sounds easy when I tell you this and put this on a slide, but your career, the jobs that you go to, actually, it's a very learnable skill. And there's lots of advantage of getting different experiences on your resume. A mentor of mine from the Amex days, and maybe some of you may still remember him, Dave Shapiro, who went from Amex to Google. He was, I think when I made my switch to Google, he was helpful in giving me some advice on that. Although he also scared the shit out of me about how much harder I'd be working there at Google, which was in fact true, but I liked what I was doing after the first 6 months. My point there? Oh, Dave Shapiro was at American Express for 12 years, I believe, and he worked in risk management, and he worked in finance, and he worked in marketing. So he thought that gave him a lot of diversity. But he told me when he went to Google, he had about a dozen years of experience, I think, when he went to Google, and he came over with similar people that also had about a dozen years of experience, but they had multiple companies on their resume, and he just had American Express on his resume. So because of that, he always felt that held him back in terms of the level he came in at and the credibility that he had, even though, knowing what I know about American Express, risk management is very different than marketing, than FP&A, and so forth. So he did have those diverse skills, but someone else who did marketing at P&G and did marketing at Target and did marketing at Colgate or whatever looked more valuable on paper going into Google than Dave did, having this 12 years of experience in different functional skills at that one company. So it can definitely be done. It's a learnable skill. People do get intimidated by, maybe they've been at Amex for a dozen years or so and haven't interviewed externally. These are all learnable skills. And that's kind of what I created Kadima for, to help people accelerate their careers, and breaking down here with support and guidance. So that's all my prepared statements that I have for today. And now I'd love to open it up for questions that people have. And I'll look in the chat window and I'll answer them. I won't say your name out loud, so feel free to put it in there. And if you'd want to be anonymous, just email, just put the question into the host and panelist, and we will just see that. If you're comfortable sharing your question with everybody, I think you can share it with everybody. So feel free to just drop questions in here. And Alyssa, if you can monitor them, the ones that I don't see, if you can let me know, either ping me on Slack or just yell them out. But I'll start reading some questions here. So one question that I see here is, if work-life balance is more important than compensation, how do you get to know the culture of the new team you're applying to work with? So work-life balance is something that you can, first off, a lot of these tech companies actually have pretty good work-life balance. It may not be as cushy as Amex. In Amex, sometimes I felt like I was working at a glorified government company. I would check out of Amex at 5 or 6 o'clock at night, would not check my emails at night, come back the next day, and nothing happened. So it was more relaxing in that. But you can find out work-life balance as you build out your network, you can speak to people at those companies. And the Google work-life balance was actually quite good. It was just tough for me the first 6 months or so. I did work hard there, but once I understood what I was doing, the work-life balance was fine. I was able to take time off with my young kids. I was able to bring my kids to work, and they loved going to work there when people used to go in person to work. The work-life balance, I would say, is very positive at Google, and Google did surveys on things like American Express did. And American Express on the survey, I don't know if they still do this survey, they always, the lowest rated thing at American Express was compensation. The lowest rated thing at Google was not work-life balance. Work-life balance was actually quite good on the internal surveys. The lowest rated thing was the tools that we had at our disposal. And that's Google, which has the best engineers and the best technology in the world. And those were not that bad of a rating, but those were the worst ratings. But compensation, they were really highly rated. And I remember when I was at American Express, management used to say, oh, every company thinks that they're underpaid. Bullshit. It's not the case at Facebook. It's not the case at Google. It's not the case at Amazon. It's not the case at Salesforce. It's not the case at some of these other companies. So you can always make more, but people don't complain about the compensation as much at those other companies. Oh, we have a Q&A box too. So thank you for that. So you can find out work-life balance on Glassdoor. You can find out it from friends. You can reach out to me. I know a lot of these companies. I know a lot of people at these companies. Feel free to reach out to me and I can give you a little heads up on the work-life balance. Do I think age being a factor in hiring for tech? No, I don't think so. Age actually works to your advantage if you're old because it helps you get into leadership roles. I don't find ageism to be there. I'm 48 years old now. That is not why I have struggled in my career at times. I've struggled because I've challenged authority, not because of my age. And I've hired people older than me. I've hired people younger than me. I have not found that to be an issue. I find that more to be a limiting belief in people's mind. I'll check the Q&A box in a second. Someone said they completed an interview at tech company for management role, and due to lack of experience with SaaS tech, they offered me an intermediate role as a coach and a player coach. I declined. How can one get experience with SaaS or talk themselves through that? So if that company was a good brand and a good company, I would take the role. Get your foot in the door. Then you can figure this stuff out. Don't worry about the title. Don't worry about if you really do like people management and they're putting you in an IC role, you may want to make a decision on that, but focus on the company. Don't worry about the role. Like American Express, a lot of these big tech companies give you a lot of opportunity for internal mobility, and it's a hell of a lot easier than Amex. It's not easy, but the promotions at American Express make it really tough to move up and get promoted. It's not like that in tech. At Google and Salesforce and Facebook, about 20% of people get promoted per year. So they're very generous with the promotion process. Let me go to the Q&A. So how do I get those relationships at big tech companies? You kept mentioning that you had someone to help you. So there's ways to reach out effectively. We teach you that at Kadima. You can also read books like The 2-Hour Job Search by Steve Dalton. You can read the book Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi, but you reach out to people, and LinkedIn is an amazing platform. You don't understand how valuable LinkedIn has been in my career in terms of giving me insight, information, being able to reach out to people. Not everybody's going to reply to you, but a surprisingly high amount will if you reach out to them in a respectful, humble, and polite manner. So I built those relationships. I've gotten better at that throughout my career, and it gets better. It becomes like a snowball rolling down the mountain. The bigger your network becomes, the easier it is. And the older you are, it actually works to your advantage, because I know so many people that have grown up in these organizations. So my network becomes stronger and stronger. But just ask. It's amazing that how many people are willing to help. And the people that are not willing to help, fuck them. There's more fish in the sea, and you can reach out to other people. I see some people on, so you just got to be a little proactive. If you need some help or guidance with that, I'm happy to chat with you about how to do that effectively. But it is really critical not only to get the job, but to understand about the company, the culture. It will give you better insight about the interview process, and and they're generally good conversations. And sometimes you'll find that you'll be able to give back to the people that you're meeting with as well. And if you don't know how to do informational interviews, there are ways to learn that. You can read about it in the 2-Hour Job Search by Steve Dalton. You can reach out to me. I'm happy to give you some tips on that. But that's how I got into American Express. When I was at Columbia Business School, I would reach out to people at American Express. I would use a Columbia Business School alumni network and say, hey, I see you at Columbia Business School and now at American Express. And I'd reach out to people and a lot of people would respond. Having blue box, like having American Express on your resume, the Amex alumni base is great. So if you look in LinkedIn and you look at people at American Express who are now at Spotify, who are now at Twilio, who are now at Asana, who are now at Shopify, who are now at Google and Amazon, and you reach out, you will have a higher likelihood of responsiveness. So you can build so you can get those relationships by being at American Express, we used to work at American Express and now work at Google. And you will find a lot of people there. You probably have friends off the top of your head that you can reach out to. Let's see. I just started Amex a month ago. How should I navigate in Amex to prep myself for the jump? So you should always be looking. You should probably take 2 paths. First, if you're there only a month, make sure that you're kicking ass in your role. So read this book, The First 90 Days, good book, and make sure that you're doing a good job in your current role. But then think about where your next step is. And you may not want to move in. You won't be able to move internally at Amex because they say you need to be in a role for 12 to 24 months, depending on your level. But think about that and look externally, have those conversations. People say, oh, it's too early to switch. Bullshit. There's no rule book on how long you need to stay at a company. I was at Andela for 4 months because I saw that it was not the right place. And within 2 months there, I realized it was not the right place. I started looking while I was still there and I got a job at Facebook 2 months later. So, and there are ways to explain that away on your resume if you look like a job hopper, but no one really asks that. People think it's a limiting belief that people think that, oh, they're going to think that I move around too much. I've never seen that hold people back. If you move every year for 8 straight years, yeah, people are going to see a pattern develop there. Question, thoughts on tech consulting firm jobs, EY and Accenture. That is what I would call a stepping stone. So if you're at Amex and you go to EY and Accenture, that's maybe consulting with the tech companies. That's a good place to be. But ideally, you don't want to be on you want to be on the client side. You don't want to be on the agency side. And Accenture and EY are essentially agents for those companies. I've worked with Accenture while I was at Facebook, and they worked for us. And it was pretty demanding that what they had to do. It was not as glorious a roles. They did not get paid as well. So it's a stepping stone, but there were people that went from Accenture to Facebook and to Google. So it's a good stepping stone opportunity. But I would say that you're going to get better benefits, better compensation, better treatment, better food. You can wear jeans, assuming that everyone gets back to work and you move from sweats back to jeans. You can do that at the big tech companies. For those that are content where they are now, should they just focus on steps 1, 2, and 3 of the framework, or do you encourage people to be searching and interviewing all along the way? I have an acronym ABL, always be looking. Keep your LinkedIn profile up to date. Keep your resume up to date. There's an indicator on LinkedIn where don't put that green circle on your LinkedIn profile that says open to work. That makes you look too easy in my mind. But there's an indicator that you can put in there that says that you're available, you're open to recruiters or something like that. That's hidden, but then recruiters can reach out to you. And I would always be looking. Like, you may not want to take the proactive approach of having target lists of companies and so forth, but you should always be listening. And if you get an interview, take it. Use it as practice, even if you're not interested. Use it as practice. Keep your interview skills fresh. Let's see. And also always be building those relationships. If you're working with external customers at American Express, use those to have conversations with them of like, hey, how is it to work at whatever company you're partnering with? What do I think about women after gap to raise family trying to join tech with fair experience? So the tech companies I'm obviously, well, not obviously, but I'm a man, I'm a white dude, so I'm in the majority. So I'm only telling you from what I've heard and seen. Tech companies are really great with maternity benefits, better than Amex, I believe. And maybe Amex is caught up, but they're really good with maternity benefits. And actually, something that I tell people, a lot of women that I consult with and are clients of mine are hesitant to be looking for a job while they're pregnant. They're like, well, I'll wait till I have the baby and then I'll start searching. I advise people to look while you're pregnant, especially now in COVID times. You guys would have no idea. Well, again, I told you I was a man, so biologically it's impossible that I'm pregnant. But I have spoken to women, I've interviewed women on Zoom. I've spoken to people on my team that I've saw go from like when she told me she was pregnant until she was ready to give birth. And I cannot tell that she was pregnant. So I personally would never hold that against someone, but there are unconscious biases there or conscious biases. And I know for a fact in the past, when I was at American Express, when I was interviewing two different candidates, one was, they were both women. One was a woman that was 7 or 8 months pregnant. I didn't ask her how pregnant she was, but it was clear that she was far along in her pregnancy. And there was another woman, and they were both equally capable. I wound up preferring the woman that was not pregnant. And that's not the right thing to do. They were both equal in my mind. So I don't know how I would have made that decision elsewhere, but you're not legally allowed to discriminate. But subconsciously or through the interview process, you never know what's happening. So if you're a pregnant woman, you can interview. You do not need to say you're pregnant. You do not need to show that you're pregnant. And it's a great time to start a job, actually, because once you get the offer, then you say, oh, by the way, I'm due next month. And you go to these tech companies and you get maternity and paternity benefits right away. And you're not screwing them over. There's ways to communicate that effectively, that you get more money working for a company with more maternity benefits. So I find the tech companies to be really very forward with the way that they treat women. And it's still harder. Like, you still look in upper management and it's significantly white dudes. But I think that it's better there than in most industries. And that's a generalization. And at least you get paid more. And I do not think it's worse personally. And they do make a lot of accommodations. When I went from Amex to Google, maybe Amex has it now, but I remember Google back in 2011 had nursing rooms, or not nursing, whatever they call it, where the women go to do their breast pump stuff. And Amex didn't have that in 2011, or at least not that I was aware of. At Google, they had so many of them, and there were rooms and that you can reserve them. I'd never reserved them, but women were allowed to reserve them. So it was a lot more accommodating. If you didn't go to a great school or even major in a relevant field and don't have an MBA, does extensive experience at Amex eventually become more important? Extensive experience, no, but your Amex experience, your professional experience becomes more and more relevant the longer you're out of school. In other words, does experience outweigh education eventually? Most definitely. When I went to Google in 2011, I was 15 years out of school. Google was a little crazy back then. I told them my GPA was a 3.7 at Binghamton, and they asked me to be more specific. I need to go to second decimal point. They've since stopped doing that. and I had to call Binghamton up and get my transcript because I didn't know what it was. But yes, the longer you're out of school, the less education matters. And I can tell you, I have hired people. Some of my greatest employees never even graduated college, and some of them went to community colleges and so forth. So it doesn't. It definitely helps if you have a Brown or a Columbia or a Duke or Stanford on your resume, but it does not hold you back if you do not. I have 22 years experience and 11 as a freelancer. Would a good high position still be an option? I seem to be seen as external, always external. I don't know what that last part means, but the experience, and 22 years experience, 11 as a freelancer. I don't know specifically there, but if you have 22 years of experience, if you graduated 22 years ago, you should convey that you have 22 years of experience, and you don't need to degrade that and say 11 years as a freelancer. Just say you have 20 years of experience and look for roles like that. I can tell you though, if you are going from Amex with 20 years of experience, you're probably going to get a job at Google saying like 10 plus years of experience, but you will still be making more money. So who really gives a shit? Or at least I don't give a shit. If you care about titles, you may want to go to stay at American Express. I can tell you it's damn hard to become a VP at the Googles and Amazons and Facebooks of the world. I ended my career as a director, but I ended my career making $577,000 of compensation. So I think that's more than level 60s make at Amex. So I don't really care what the level or title is. Oh, great. Amex gives 6 months paid and men get 5 months paid. When I was at Amex, I had to take sick leave for my kids, my babies, when they were born in 2006. So it's good that that's improved. And I see that Amex gives better benefits. Awesome. I had to take sick leave for my first kids in 2006. And in 2008, when I had my daughter, Jasmine, they gave me 2 weeks. So it's great that they have improved that. Do I see location being less of a factor now in long term? Yes, Midwest has a chance. All these companies are going remote. They're much more remote friendly, and there are ways to have that conversation. So yes, remote. When I was at Salesforce, even before COVID struck, 17% of the workforce were remote. And so a lot of these, Google and Facebook encourage more in person, but there's lots of benefits there of being in person. They give you really good food, and the collaboration is great there. But I think all those companies are rethinking things due to COVID, and no one has an answer now. They keep changing their policies. So I would not let that be a factor. Go there. And then if you find out that they're making you go into the office after COVID, you can go somewhere else. And there's ways to delay that conversation. And I'm happy to share with people how to do that. Is it easier to get a VP at big tech if you're already a VP at Amex, or does that matter? No, a VP at Amex will probably translate to a level 7 or a level 8. Like a 8 is usually director, and you can check any of this out at levels.fyi. If you really care about the title and you really are hung up on your VP title, you likely will not become a VP at one of the big tech companies. I personally never cared about my title. I cared when I was at American Express because I wanted to see that upward progression. But when I moved to another company, I didn't really care about the title if the company name had more prestige and they were paying me more. So the title didn't really matter to me. But most likely, if you're a 45 or 50 at Amex, you will be going into like a level 7 or like level 6, which is manager, level 7, which is head of, level 8, which is director. But if you care about that, then that's okay. But I would rather focus on the title of the name of the company and the opportunities that it provides you, and the money, which can pay for your vacation and pay for your kids' education and pay for your dinner and all that stuff. So we are at time. So I hope that this was helpful for folks. I'd love to hear your feedback if you reach out to me. Hopefully most of you are connected with me on LinkedIn, but I will put my LinkedIn in the chat here so folks can reach out to me. It's Alan J. Stein, but you can look up. Let me just put that quickly in here for those that cannot easily find me on LinkedIn. And yeah, if you want to follow up with me, I'd love to hear your feedback. If there are ways that I can help you make the jump, I highly encourage the jump. It's been extremely successful, even though the ups and downs, even though I dealt with some major imposter syndrome and depression and got fired multiple times after Amex. It was things that I did. Most people would not replicate those things that led to my my firing, but it was not because it was a more competitive culture. It was because I was challenging authority and said something stupid once. But most people are less stupid than me. So thank you. Hope this was a valuable use of your time. And if there are other people that you know at Amex that can benefit, either have them reach out to me. I can send them the recording of this. And yeah, Happy New Year, everybody. Bye-bye. I'm going to end this if I can find the right button. Otherwise, I'm going to stop sharing and have a great week, everybody. Happy Thursday. And I'll hopefully speak with many of you soon. Bye-bye. Oh, also last plug. We are doing the Kadima Career Acceleration Program. It's a 13-week program that helps you get great jobs in big tech. So if you're interested in that, reach out to me. We still have a few openings left for the first quarter program. So I'm here to help. Catch you later. Bye-bye.